So, one of the questions I've been seeing come up a lot is, what is the identity of Fredbear? You see Fredbear in this diner slash pizzeria slash wherever this place is supposed to be, and everybody's just saying, wow, that's Fredbear. What does that mean? Now, before this game came out and we first saw the teaser, I know a lot of people, I saw the guys at 8-Bit Gaming and a couple other folk talk about how they thought that the identity of that purple hat and that purple bow-tied character that they showed on the screen was Fredbear. Via the source code, of the website, talking about how it had Fredbear's name in a special letter jumble puzzle thing. And with that, a lot of people, they jumped to this weird big conclusion that Fredbear somehow was Golden Freddy. Now, I don't want to knock anybody's theory, if you can even call it that, but I do want to say right now, with some semblance of confidence, that you are probably right and wrong at the same time. Let me explain why. Now, a lot of speculation about this game has come up through Scott Cawthon not really showing us a lot of stuff directly, but in this case, the thing that we think we haven't been shown directly or we're trying to piece together, we actually have been. And without people jumping to too many conclusions about where stuff is supposed to mean and where things are supposed to be taking place, we've seen concrete evidence in this game already as to what the identity of Fredbear is and what the identity of Golden Freddy is. Let me break this down for you. In Five Nights at Freddy's 3, there were several minigames that you could get to via clicking on special items around the Fazbear's front. And one of these minigames, you played as a yellow Freddy character of some kind, a yellow bear wearing a hat, who sat on stage with a bunch of cheering children. And next to you was a yellow rabbit animatronic. After this came out, I saw so many people talking about, wow, this must be Fredbear's Family Diner. That must be Fredbear, and Spring Bonnie was there. And then everybody in the entire world who makes a fan game in which Fredbear's Family Diner is just one big room with a bunch of little rooms on the sides, and they just have two animatronics. And I think that is the worst possible concept that someone could figure out, because no one even knows if Fredbear in the Family Diner was even an animatronic or if it was just a guy in a suit. But in this minigame, in which you crawl around through walls and glitch and stuff, you play as this yellow bear who's on stage. And what you can see distinctly about this yellow bear is that they have a regular dark colored hat and dark colored bow tie, unlike Fredbear, which then completely negates the idea that this character is Fredbear that we see in the minigames in Five Nights at Freddy's 4. But what it doesn't negate, what it doesn't debunk, is the idea that this is another Fredbear at another establishment. Think back. Think back to the fifth night of Five Nights at Freddy's 4, and think back to that minigame in Five Nights at Freddy's 3. Isn't the imagery eerily similar? Isn't there two animatronics on a stage in some sort of pizzeria? When you think of a diner, you think of tables, benches, bar stools, quick food, food. You think of food because it's a diner, and if they have a gimmick and cake and stuff, it's still a diner. These places in both these minigames do not look like diners at all. They look like pizzerias with balloons and all kinds of stage stuff that you would see at like a Chuck E. Cheese, which would make sense if they are not Fredbear's Family Diner. And I'm pretty convinced at this point that they are not. What they do seem to be are early Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria establishments. The one you see in Five Nights at Freddy's 3's minigame is the one that follows the franchise that you play in the first three games. The one in which the crying child event happens, the one in which the four ghostly children and the fifth ghostly child is trapped inside Golden Freddy. All that stuff happens there. And the one that we see in the minigame in Five Nights at Freddy's 4 is the sister location that is referenced one time in Five Nights at Freddy's 3's phone calls. What we see in both of these instances is two establishments, two pizzerias with two stages that both have their own Spring Lock animatronic costumes, their own Spring Freddy, their own Spring Bonnie. But Spring Freddy isn't actually Spring Freddy. Spring Freddy is the character known as Fredbear. the character that is a different character than Freddy Fazbear. In the same way that Spring Bonnie might not actually be the same character as Bonnie. Maybe Bonnie is blue and Spring Bonnie is yellow. We've been thinking that these characters are the same characters this whole time. Maybe we've been thinking that there's these regular ones and these yellow ones, but perhaps, as we're seeing more so now, these characters could be completely different characters. The same way that they could have like a slightly different Power Ranger. They could have the Red Ranger and they can have that Dark Red Ranger who's one of the bad guys eventually, but then they turn good. We don't know about the origins of these characters. But let's think about this very reasonable possibility. Let's think about a company-wide banning of these Springlock costumes, in which a sister location has a Springlock malfunction where a Fredbear animatronic bites down on the head of a kitten, possibly kills them, possibly just mangles them up, and they realize, wow, these things are not only death traps to people, but death traps to children too. They ban these things throughout all the establishments, including the ones that we play in the first 2 games. Or, the ones that occurred before that in the timeline. And that place has those animatronics stored away. Think back to the number of times Golden Freddy has ever been referenced by the phone guy or any in-game text in the entire series. Pretty much never. We have one instance in which we might have been referencing Golden Freddy, and the most we get out of it is, there was a yellow suit spare in the back, and someone used it. That's it. That's all we hear. Now, this might be something that would be something Scott put in to mislead people or to make people wonder, is this the Spring Bonnie? Is this the Golden Freddy? Which one? Is there a new animatronic? Perhaps this is something he did intentionally, or otherwise, he could have intentionally said this because Phone Guy and a lot of the other people who work in this establishment don't know what it's called anymore. Look at this, the image that we see on the TV in the Easter egg for Five Nights at Freddy's 4. Was it Fredbear and Family? Fredbear and Friends, 1983? Fredbear might have stopped being a thing as a character in Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria in 1983. For a variety of reasons. One being that he could have possibly been the one that caused the death of a child. One because maybe, why do we need 2 bear characters in our store? It could be a lot of things. But with this happening, then why do we need to keep this character or their name or any of their stuff around? It's not going to help us. Why would people buy one and not the other? Why would people, what is the appeal to having 2 of the same thing when we have a bear that sings and another bear that sings? So then they get rid of Fredbear, the place is Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria, and they just stick with Freddy. Think about it. After you're in this new pizzeria that's been closed down and reopened for a variety of reasons, murders and not, you hear on the phone a recorded message from some superior of some kind telling you that someone used a yellow suit in the back. Perhaps he's not saying that because he doesn't know which one or to make you confused. Perhaps he's saying that because he doesn't know what it's called. Maybe Phone Guy hasn't been in this business as long as we think he has either. Maybe he's only been here as long as maybe the second pizzeria that's been around in this timeline. This leads up to one of the bigger mysteries in this game, which is who is Golden Freddy? And I think Golden Freddy, the animatronic, the one we see slouched over, the one that seems to be a hallucination or whatever, is merely a visual representation of an animatronic that was discontinued. A Fredbear character that people have forgotten about. So much so that, a lot like the Power Rangers where they have the Silver and the White Ranger where they're very similar, or the Sonic and the people say, wow, is that Shadow? That just looks like a red Sonic. We see this other character who we don't really have any connection to anymore. No name, no information, no nothing. And the only thing we can do is say, look at that Golden Freddy. I mean, that's not his name, but we don't remember what his name is anymore. Food for thought.